You're underwater. Not literally, financially. Your rent's $1,800, car payment for $150, insurance to $100, student loans $300. Before groceries, you've spent $2,750. Your take-home, $3,500. You've got $750 left for everything else. Gas, phone, subscriptions, food. God forbid something breaks. You're not broke yet, but you're one emergency away from it. And the worst part, you think you're managing. You tell yourself it's temporary, that next year will be different, but it won't be. Because you're not budgeting. You're just reacting, month after month, paycheck after paycheck. Here's the question no one's asking you. If you can't save now, when your income is the highest it's ever been, how exactly are you planning to retire? Because here's what I've seen happen 100 times. Someone makes $60,000, then $70,000, then $80,000. And somehow they're still living the exact same way, stressed, paycheck dependent, one bad month away from using a credit card to cover rent. The advice? Budget smarter, track your spending, use the 50-30-20 rule, and people do. They split their income on paper, 50% needs, 30% wants, 20% savings. Clean, simple, responsible. Except it doesn't work. Not because the rule is broken, but because the way you're using it is completely backwards. And until you see that, you're just going to keep sinking deeper into the same cycle. I'm Jordan. And if you're tired of feeling like you're doing everything right, but still ending every month with nothing left over, then you might want to hear this. Because once you understand what's actually happening, the solution becomes obvious. Hit subscribe if that sounds like something you'd rather not miss. Let's start with the rule itself. 50% of your income goes to needs, 30% to wants, 20% to savings and debt payoff. Sounds reasonable. Except most people hear that and immediately start doing math on their gross income. You make $60,000 a year. You think, $30,000 for needs, $18,000 for wants, $12,000 for savings. Perfect. You feel responsible just writing it down. But your actual paycheck, after federal tax, state tax, FICA, health insurance, you're taking home maybe $45,000. And now that clean 50-30-20 split just became 67-40-27, which adds up to 130% of money you don't actually have. You're already underwater before you've even opened your wallet. Here's the first mistake. You're budgeting with money you'll never see. And this isn't a small problem. This is why your budget fails in week 2. You allocate $2,500 for needs, but your needs cost $3,000. You allocate $1,500 for wants, but you've already spent $1,800. The numbers don't match reality. So you tell yourself you're bad at budgeting and give up. But you're not bad at budgeting. You're just calculating the percentages on the wrong number. According to a 2020 for Bankrate survey, 56% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency with savings. Not because they don't earn enough, but because they've already spent money that doesn't exist yet. They budgeted with their gross income, lived on their net income, and wondered why nothing adds up. Now let's talk about the second problem, the 50% needs category. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, car payment, minimum debt payments. All of that is supposed to fit into 50% of your take-home income. But does it? Let's say your take-home is $3,500 a month. That gives you $1,750 for needs. Rent in most mid-sized American cities averages $1,500 for a one-bedroom. You've got $250 left. Car payment, insurance, gas, groceries, phone. Let's keep going. Car payment for $150. Oh wait, you're already $100 over budget and you haven't eaten yet. Insurance, $200. Now you're $100 over. Groceries for the month, $100. Gas, $150. Phone, $80. Your needs just cost $2,780. That's 79% of your income, not 50%, 79%. So what do? You start borrowing from the 30%. You tell yourself it's fine. Groceries are kind of a want, right? I could eat cheaper. And now your wants shrink to 20%. Your savings? Gone. Pushed to next month. But next month never comes. Because this isn't a budgeting problem. It's a design problem. You're trying to fit a $2,780 lifestyle into a $1,750 box. And instead of shrinking the lifestyle, you just keep shrinking the future. The second mistake, you're treating needs as fixed, when most of them are actually negotiable. Here's where it gets psychological. The word needs makes everything feel non-negotiable. You need a car. You need a place to live. You need to eat, and that's true. But you don't need a $450 car payment. You need transportation. Those are not the same thing. You don't need a $1,800 apartment. You need shelter. And there's probably a $1,500 option or a $1,300 option with a roommate or a $1,200 option 15 minutes further from downtown. But the moment you call it a need, you stop questioning it. You accept it as reality. And now you're stuck trying to make the other categories absorb the overflow. Now, you might be thinking, I already live cheap. I can't cut rent. I can't get rid of my car. I'm doing the best I can. And maybe you are. But let me ask you this. When's the last time you actually looked for a cheaper apartment? Not thought about it. Actually searched, called landlords, toured units. When's the last time you ran the numbers on selling your car and buying something older? Or dropping full coverage on a car that's worth $6,000? Or canceling the $200 insurance and switching to a provider that charges $140? Because here's what actually happens. You make these decisions once. You sign the lease. You finance the car. You pick the insurance. And then you never revisit them. They become background noise, fixed cost, needs, but they're not fixed. They're just unexamined. And that unexamined $500 a month. Over a year, that's $6,000. Over 5 years, that's $30,000. That's the down payment on a house you're spending on decisions you made 3 years ago and never reconsidered. You're not stuck because you don't earn enough. You're stuck because you're defending choices that don't serve you anymore. Now let's move to the 30% wants category. Dining out, entertainment, shopping, hobbies, streaming services. That's supposed to be guilt-free spending, discretionary, fun money. Except it's not discretionary when you've already overspent on needs. And it's definitely not guilt-free when you're carrying $8,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest. But let's say you've actually kept your needs to 50%. You've got $1,050 a month for wants. That's $35 a day. Sounds reasonable. Monday, $12 lunch at Chipotle, $6 coffee. You're at $18. Tuesday, $15 DoorDash, $8 drinks after work. You're at $41 total. Wednesday, $40 impulse buy on Amazon, $10 parking downtown. You're at $91. Thursday, $60 dinner out, $15 Uber. You're at $166. And we're not even halfway through the week. Now, you might be thinking, I don't even spend 30% on wants. I'm careful. And maybe you are. But let me ask you this. How much did you actually spend on Amazon last month? DoorDash? Target? Uber? Because here's what actually happens. You don't plan to spend 30%. You just drift into it. None of it feels significant. A $12 lunch is just lunch. A $40 impulse buy is just one thing. A $15 subscription is just $15. But by the end of the month, it adds up to $900. And you have no idea where it went, because you never tracked it. You just assumed you were being reasonable. The third mistake, you think 30% is a target. It's actually a ceiling, and you're treating it like a floor. According to the Federal Reserve, the average American has $6,500 in credit card debt. And the majority of that, it didn't come from emergencies. It didn't come from medical bills or car repairs. It came from small, repeated, untracked purchases that felt harmless at the time. You didn't go into debt because of one bad decision. You drifted into debt because of 1,000 tiny ones. And here's the thing no one's telling you. The system is designed for you to drift. Every app you use, every website you visit, every checkout process has been optimized to make spending feel effortless. One-click ordering, saved payment info, buy now, pay later, auto-renewing subscriptions, free trials that convert to paid without asking. You're not fighting your own bad habits. You're fighting a $1 trillion infrastructure built to extract money from you as frictionlessly as possible, and it's working. The average American has 12 paid subscriptions: streaming, music, apps, gym memberships, software. Most people can name maybe 6 of them. The other 6, they're still being charged every month for services they don't use. Because canceling requires effort, and effort creates friction. And friction is the only thing protecting your money. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so I'll just track my spending better. I'll use an app. I'll check my bank account every week. And maybe you will for 2 weeks, maybe 3. And then life gets busy. You forget to log a purchase, then another. Then you stop checking. And 6 months later, you're right back where you started. Because tracking doesn't solve the problem. Tracking just makes you aware of the problem. And awareness without structure is just guilt. You don't need more awareness. You need a system that works even when you're not paying attention. So let's put this together. You're budgeting with money you don't have. You're overspending on needs you haven't questioned in years. And you're drifting through wants without any real awareness. Fighting a system designed to make spending invisible. What happens to the 20%? The savings, the debt payoff, the thing that's supposed to get you out of this mess, it disappears. Not because you're responsible, but because you've designed a system where it's the first thing to go. The 20% isn't protected. It's whatever's left over. And there's never anything left over. This is where most people give up. They try the 50/30/20 rule for 2 months, realize it doesn't work, and conclude that budgeting just isn't for them, that they're bad with money, that they'll figure it out later. But that's not what's happening. You're not bad with money. You're just using the rule backwards, because here's the hidden assumption in the 50/30/20 rule. It assumes you'll spend on needs first, then wants, then save whatever's left. It assumes you're disciplined enough to stop spending when you hit your limits. It assumes the money will still be there at the end of the month, but it won't be. Because spending expands to fill available space. If you have $3,500 in your account, you'll find a way to spend $3,500, not intentionally, not maliciously, just automatically, because the money's there, and when money's there, it gets spent. The 50/30/20 rule isn't wrong, but the order of operations is backwards, and that changes everything. Here's what you should be doing instead. And this is the part no one tells you. You don't start with the 50%. You start with the 20%. The moment your paycheck hits your account, the first thing you do is move 20% into a separate account. Savings, debt payoff, investment, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it's gone. Untouchable. Automated. Before you even think about rent or groceries or anything else, now you've got 80% left. And that's what you have to work with. Not 100%. Not whatever's left over. Exactly 80%. And here's what happens. When you only have 80% available, you start making different decisions. That $1,800 apartment, suddenly you're looking at $1,500 options. That $450 car payment. You start questioning whether you actually need a $30,000 car. Those $200 in subscriptions. You cancel the ones you don't use, because scarcity creates discipline. Abundance creates drift. When you have $3,500 in your account, your brain sees abundance. You feel safe. You spend loosely. I have plenty becomes where did it all go? But when you have $2,800 in your account because you already moved $700 to savings, your brain sees scarcity. You feel pressure. You spend carefully. I need to make this last becomes I made it last. This isn't willpower. This is design. Let me explain why this works. When you tell yourself I'll save whatever's left, you're relying on future discipline. You're betting that future you will be more responsible, more focused, more motivated than current you. But future you is just as tired, just as stressed, just as tempted. And future you has one additional problem. Future you already spent the money. Future discipline doesn't exist. It's a fantasy. Every time you say I'll save next month, you're lying to yourself. Not because you want to lie, but because the conditions that make saving hard today will still exist next month. But when you pay yourself first, you're not relying on discipline. You're removing the choice entirely. The money's already gone. You can't spend it. You can't borrow from it. You can't even see it. It's not in your checking account. It's not an option. Behavioral economists call this a commitment device. You're locking in the right decision before you have a chance to make the wrong one. You're designing for your actual behavior, not your ideal behavior. And the beauty of it, once you've done this for 3 months, you stop noticing. Your brain adjusts. You start living on 80% without even thinking about it. The $2,800 feels like your full paycheck. Because it is. The other $700, that's not your money anymore. That's future you's money. And future you is going to be very grateful. Let's talk numbers. Because this is where it gets real. Let's say you make $3,500 a month. 20% is $700. That's $8. For $100 a year. In 3 years, that's $25,000 to $100. And if you're putting that into a high-yield savings account at 4.5% AP, it's closer to $26,800. That's not a trick. That's just math. But you'll never get there if you keep doing it the other way around. Now, you might be thinking, but $700 a month is too much. I can't afford that. And if that's true, start with 10%, start with 5%, start with $100. The percentage doesn't matter as much as the sequence. Because here's what happens when you pay yourself first. Even if it's only $100, you prove to yourself that you can live on less. And once you prove that, you can increase it from $100 to $200, from 5% to 10%, from 10% to 15%. But if you never start, you never prove anything. You just keep telling yourself you'll start when you earn more. And when you earn more, your spending increases. And you still have nothing left over. The amount matters less than the habit. And the habit only forms when the system makes it automatic. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to try this. You're going to set up the automatic transfer. And in week 2, you're going to feel squeezed. You're going to look at your checking account and think, I don't have enough. I need that $700 back. And you're going to be tempted to move it back, to borrow from savings, to tell yourself just this once. Don't. Because that feeling, that squeeze, that's not a problem. That's the point. That discomfort is the signal that you're actually changing your behavior. If it feels easy, you're not doing it right. That squeeze is what forces you to cancel the subscription you don't use, to cook instead of ordering out, to skip the impulse buy, to actually look at the $450 car payment and think, do I really need this? The squeeze is where the discipline gets built, not through willpower, but through necessity. And here's the thing. That squeeze, it only lasts about 6 weeks. After that, your brain recalibrates. The $2,800 stops feeling like a restriction and starts feeling normal. The squeeze becomes your baseline, but you have to make it through the 6 weeks. And the only way to make it through is to protect the 20%, no matter what. Because if you borrow from it once, you'll borrow from it every time. And then you're right back to saving whatever's left over, which is nothing. Now here's the part where most people nod along and then do nothing. Because they think they need to overhaul their entire financial life to make this work. They don't. You need to do one thing today, right now. Open a separate savings account. Doesn't matter which bank. Doesn't matter if it earns interest. What matters is that it's separate, not your checking account, not your emergency fund that you dip into whenever you feel like it. A completely separate account. Then set up an automatic transfer. The day after your paycheck hits, 20% moves to that account. Automatically. No decision. No willpower, it just happens. That's it. That's the whole thing. You don't need to track every expense. You don't need to cut out coffee. You don't need to feel guilty about spending. You just need to remove the 20% from circulation before you have a chance to spend it. And once that's in place, everything else starts falling into line. Because now you're not budgeting with 100%. You're budgeting with 80%. And 80% forces you to make real decisions about what actually matters. Now, once you've done this for 3 months, here's what you do next. You start questioning the 50%. Because remember, your needs are probably closer to 70% or 80% right now. And that's why the 20% feels impossible. You're trying to save 20% when your needs are eating 80%. The math doesn't work. So once the 20% is automated and protected, you start attacking the needs. Not all of them, just one. Maybe it's the $450 car payment. You sell the car, buy something for $8,000 cash, and eliminate the payment entirely. Now you've freed up $450 a month. Maybe it's the $1,800 rent. You find a $1,500 place. Or you get a roommate and drop it to $1,100. Now you've freed up $300 to $600 a month. Maybe it's the $200 insurance. You switch providers, raise your deductible, drop coverage you don't need. Now you've freed up $60 a month. And here's what happens to that freed up money. It doesn't go to wants. It goes to the 20%. You increase the automatic transfer from $700 to $1,000, from 20% to 28%. And now you're not just surviving, you're building. You're not just covering emergencies. You're investing. You're not just avoiding debt. You're creating options. This is how you get out, not by earning more, but by designing a system that protects the future from the present. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You just spent 15 minutes watching a video that explained exactly why you're stuck and exactly how to fix it. You know the problem. You know the solution. You know the first step. So if 6 months from now you're still in the same place, living paycheck to paycheck, stressed about money, wondering why nothing's changed, it's not because you didn't know. It's because you didn't act. And at that point, it's not an accident. It's a choice. This channel exists for people who'd rather deal with the discomfort of the truth than the comfort of going broke slowly. If that's you, hit subscribe. Because the next video is going to challenge something else you thought you had figured out. The first domino is the automatic transfer. Move 20% before you spend $1. Everything else is just details.